we're going to move on to his experiences. And we're going to start with these early incidents that happened in his life. Right back to childhood, he's had things happen from quite an early age, and these are going to be covering sort of different subject matters, as you'll see. And the first thing we wanted to discuss with you happened right back in either 1954 and 1955. I'm now going to hand over the mic to John, and he's going to take you through this experience.
This is my very first time of talking about my experiences. I have bottled up most of these experiences now since the beginning of my life till now, 71. I've told Dave, who's the first person I ever spoke to him about these experiences, and thank you for that, Dave, because he was prepared to listen and not judge. That's my name, by the way. We can have a laugh. Go on, it helps me if you laugh. And it's led through our time together, me coming to the club, so on and so forth, and then releasing these. Because it took me a long time to get used to Dave. I don't.
You couldn't possibly comment.
It takes a long time to get used to somebody if I'm going to talk about this. You don't just talk to anybody. You have to be very careful who you talk to. At the moment, I've got a room full of like-minded people. And that's great, because you're going to listen, hopefully, to what I say, and hopefully you're not going to judge me too much. Because when he first started, not the event I'm going to talk about in a second, in 1954, 55, but, okay. But we're going to be, I need to talk about this to try and get this out, because as I say, I've been bottling it up, and it's very hard for me to sit here and talk to you about something that's very personal, something that back in the 70s I was not able to discuss it with anybody, no one. There was no one around to talk to. That's a fact. Today it's a lot easier because you've got the release of the new videos, and America's now admitting that it's been looking at UFOs, constantly looking at them and investigating them right the way through to today, and they're saying, yes, we believe in UFOs. Great. I wish that had been around when I was having my first experience. Anyway, carry on. Let me start off in 1955, when I was a very young lad. I was born in 1951, so I'll give you an idea. And I was staying at my grandma's. The house was a typical old house back then, it's all been knocked down now. And I was invited to stay in her bed and stay the night, which I did. When I was in the bed, I wasn't particularly thinking about anything that I remember, nothing. There was nothing happening, there was no parties going on, there was no people out in the streets, yelling and screaming, nothing, absolutely nothing going on. And I lay down on my belly, and right by the window, my grandmother used to have an old chest of drawers. I don't know if you remember them. And at the top of those there were two candlesticks. And I remember staring between these two candlesticks. And as I lay there staring, I noticed a flickering starting to occur. This flickering got bigger and brighter until there was images of men running around the fire with hoses, putting the fire out. And then that was it. Didn't think any more of it. Went to sleep. Woke up the next morning and got on with the rest of my life. And that's the way it was. It wasn't until about 41, 42 years later I was speaking to my mum, and she happened to turn around to me and say, I wonder what happened to your grandfather's fire helmet. And they stunned me a little bit because I'd always believed that my grandfather was a salt mine, worked in a salt mine. And my mum said, yes, you're quite right. He did. But then he packed it up and became a part-time fireman. And just like that, boom, this memory, bang, straight in my head. And I thought to myself, was that my grandfather trying to make contact? I was 5 years old. What would I know about paranormal? What would I know about it? And yet that memory came back, quick as that, bang. It was there, and it was as fresh as a day that I've seen it. Now, I've had other paranormal experiences, which we're not going to go into tonight, but I do think there is a correlation between the spirits and UFOs, but that's another kettle of fish. What I need to do now is to move on slightly forward, because that was the beginning of my travel, if you like, in the paranormal and the ufology.
Yeah, so as John said, it took place at his grandmother's house, which was in the area of Nechells, which some of you may be familiar with. And he had this strange vision between the candlesticks. This is a drawing that I got John to do of the experience. Down the bottom, this is his bed. At the edge of his bed, that's the cover he was talking about, and that's the vision. So it's quite a small image. So there's the two candlesticks, and then there's a strange vision going on in the middle with flames, and there's little figures running around. Now obviously John, being so young, didn't kind of fully associate that. He didn't know what he was looking at, didn't fully associate it with being firemen putting out a fire, but that seems to be clearly what this vision seemed to be showing. And as I said, it had this link to his grandfather's old job, which is really, really interesting. There's a number of kind of possibilities for what took place with this, some of them possibly more mundane than others. Now, as a researcher, you've always got to look into all explanations. You can't automatically jump to conclusions. Looking into this, there's a number of different things. So first of all is the possibility that it was a vivid dream. Obviously, John was quite young at the time, so you have to take that into account. So he very much felt like he was awake at the time and was seeing this with his own eyes. But as a child, was it some kind of strange, vivid dream that he remembered like a waking experience?
One thing I've learnt over the years is this. I'll ask you a question. How many of you remember your dreams, regardless of how vivid they are or how bad they were, if they were nightmares? How many can you recall those dreams today? The answer is you can't. Dreams come and they disappear. But this wasn't, in my explanation, this was not a dream, because that memory was there.
The other mundane, possibly a mundane explanation for this experience is something known as sleep hypnagogia, which some of you will have heard of. In looking into the contact field, I have to look into mundane explanations for contact, and hypnagogia will turn up quite regularly. You may be far more familiar with the term sleep paralysis, and some of you here tonight may have experienced sleep paralysis. It sounds absolutely horrific, and I really hope that I never get to experience it. Sleep hypnagogia is a kind of wide term that includes sleep paralysis. Now, what it essentially means is hallucinations that occur in sort of semi-states of sleep. Yeah? So when you're dropping off to sleep, you can be sort of in a semi-awake state, and in that state you can have visual and audio hallucinations. And also hallucinations like you feel like you might be being pulled a particular direction. And there's many cases. This is, it's widely known about by science. Mainstream science accepts this as a thing. So sometimes people may, for example, feel like they're being pulled down the bed or something like that. Yeah. Now it's completely separate from contact in a number of ways, and we're not talking about abduction here with this experience. But take, for example, hypnagogia doesn't make you go to a completely different location where you're outside of the realms of your room. But you can see very, very unusual things. Now, the reason why I don't think sleep hypnagogia is the option here, really, is due to the level of detail of John's vision. A lot of the time with sleep hypnagogia, people can see sort of loose, kind of shadowy forms, like things that kind of look like creepy sort of figures in the darkness and this sort of thing. It's usually not very, very specific and very clear like that. This is a kind of very clear vision of something in a very specific location in the room. Very, very interesting indeed. And it makes you wonder whether it has anything to do with the fact it's between candlesticks which are set on fire, so you've got the fire link there with it again. Very odd. Another possibility is, of course, a ghostly apparition, that this was in fact the ghost of his grandfather, or sort of the spirit of his grandfather showing him a vision that was linked with his previous work as a firefighter. Certainly worth considering. And there's another possible explanation, in that it was a psychic vision of some kind, as in John was picking up, by being at his grandparents' house, he was picking up aspects of his grandfather's life psychically, and that projected itself as some kind of a visible manifestation. So your own views on the paranormal world will determine which of those you think is the most likely, but they're all kind of interesting considerations with this. As I said, yeah, there is a direct link, and John's quote mentioned this as well. There's a direct link between ET contact and paranormal activity. In over 85%, last time I did a count, in over 85% of the cases I've investigated, people have reported having paranormal experiences as well as contact experiences in their life.